Hello. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. Now, this is one of the Witcher novels. Now, it's quite a popular franchise, but I have not had much exposure to this before. This is actually my first time reading any of the books. I've never played any of the games, and I have only seen one episode of the show. I saw the very first one when it came out, but that's about it. Anyway, this book is actually, it's not so much a novel, it's more a collection of short stories. So there are 6 stories included, plus there's a 7th, which sort of serves as like the framing device that splits up all of the stories. Now, each of these stories obviously has the same main character, and a few of them share some like other characters, but for the most part it's just the main character, Geralt of Rivia, who is the Witcher. Now, a Witcher is basically someone who was human and they like mutated with dangerous magic or something, which makes them have enhanced senses and like they're a lot stronger and more powerful than regular people. And they go around and they hunt monsters. However, there is a bit of a stigma against them. Not many people like them, even though they do the world a service by ridding it of monsters. Now, each of these stories sort of follows a different little adventure that Geralt goes on, and each of these stories is fairly self-contained. Now, I'll go in depth into all of them in a sec, but to give a basic idea of what sort of themes and messages that the stories kind of impart. So it exists in a fantasy world that's sort of got basically any sort of fantastical creature you can think of. And Geralt goes around dealing with these monsters. Now, when I say dealing with them, he's not just a mindless brute who goes around killing these monsters. See, the stories actually reveal a bit more complexity than just, heroes and monsters and stuff. Some of the stories involve him helping to cure people of curses or magical ailments and stuff. Generally, there's some kind of moral complexity involved. So I think the best way for me to review this book is I'm going to go through each story in turn, give a brief overview of what it's about, and share my thoughts on it. So I will first jump into The Witcher. The Witcher is the first short story. It serves as an introduction to the character, the world, the setting, and general themes and all that. It opens with Geralt going to a bar when some people come and harass him because he's a witcher and people don't like witches. Things escalate as they try and make him leave, and then they end up attacking him and he very quickly kills them all. After this, he's taken by the guards to meet the Castellan. So Geralt talks to the Castellan and they end up talking about a problem that's going on. Basically, the king's daughter has been turned into a monster called a Striga. The Castellan tries to hire the Witcher to deal with this issue. So he ends up meeting with the king and he talks to the king about the whole situation. And then the king leaves and the Witcher has to talk to all the king's men about the situation. And he ends up agreeing to help them out. So then the Witcher ends up talking to some witnesses who've seen the Striga in action. And then the king in disguise goes over and starts talking to the Witcher. There's a lot of talking in this book. A lot of talking. Anyway, some things happen. The Witcher ends up going to fight the Striga for a bit. However, he's not trying to kill it. See, the king believes that his daughter can be cured and that's what he wants the Witcher to do. So yeah, this story, I think it served as a pretty good introduction. Now, the story is basically, half of it is just talking and the other half is like the action scenes. So there's definitely a lot of talking. Now, Geralt is sort of differentiated from the other character, from basically everyone else, because he's kind of quiet. He does talk, usually speaks in shorter sentences, and sometimes he doesn't even say anything at all when questioned. And yeah, when he does talk, he generally doesn't say as many words, whereas every single other character just blathers on and on and on and on and on for pages. This story also had some pretty good action scenes. So overall, I think this story was a pretty good introduction to The Witcher. It sort of shows the basis of what he's about. So I'd say it was pretty good. However, I feel like it can kind of fall flat with some of the political intrigue that is sort of hinted at, that seems to be sort of going on in the kingdom a bit. But like Geralt doesn't really get involved with any of that. So it just feels a bit weird when that kind of plays into the plot of this story a little bit. So yeah, I think overall it was a pretty good introduction. Next we have A Grain of Truth. While the previous story was like 50% talking, this one's like 80% talking. Essentially, Geralt is going for a walk in the forests and he finds some people who've been mauled by an animal or something. He does some investigating and then stumbles across this mansion. And it's occupied by this person who's got like animal claws and an animal face and all that, because he was cursed or something. Anyway, the Witcher ends up getting invited in to have dinner with him, and they get to talking, and they talk for quite a bit. This man explains his whole life story, essentially. Explains why he was cursed, and goes on and on and on. Anyway, Geralt knows that he's not the one responsible for the maulings, so he ends up leaving, and then he ends up figuring out what really did the maulings. So he goes back because he realizes that it was the girl that the guy was with, because she's just like a vampire or something. And there's like a big action scene at the end, which was pretty well written. Overall, this story was okay-ish. As I said, it was like mostly just talking, and then the big action scene at the end. So next we have The Lesser Evil. Geralt ends up meeting with this wizard who is hiding out in a tower because someone is trying to kill him. And this someone was Renfrey, and her life was essentially ruined because she's basically born at the wrong time. There's some kind of like curse or something, and because of this, the wizard was like going after all these people that like matched up to this curse or something. Anyway, he essentially ruined her life, and she wants revenge, so she's been hunting him down for quite a while now, and she's finally tracked him down to this town that he's in now. So the wizard asks Geralt to kill her, saying that like she's a monster and she needs to be killed. So then Geralt goes to talk with her at the tavern, and we get her side of the story, and she asks Geralt to kill the wizard. And each of these people, when they ask the Witcher to kill the other, explains that it's the lesser evil, because if he doesn't, then worse things will happen. Anyway, Geralt's not entirely sure what he wants to do. He doesn't want to kill either of them. But then eventually Renfrey and the men working for her hatch this plot to cause chaos to try and draw out the wizard. Geralt figures out they're going to attack the marketplace, so he goes and puts a stop to them, and he ends up having to kill Renfrey. And then he's all sad about that because they boned. I don't know why. There's not really much like chemistry. It's more just he's a man and she's a woman, so that equals sex, I guess. Anyway, the action scene was pretty good in this one, but like overall, this story was a bit for me. I didn't really get the whole thing with Geralt and Renfrey. However, it did explore some interesting moral concepts, so it was at least sort of intriguing. Next, we have A Question of Price, which is my personal favourite from this book. Now, essentially, this story takes place at a dinner party where the queen of this country is trying to find a suitable suitor for her daughter to marry. So people from all over have come over in hopes of winning her hand. And the queen has hired the Witcher to come here because she suspects something's going to happen. And what ends up happening is a mysterious knight arrives. He claims that the daughter has been promised to him by her late father. Hijinks ensue. There's a big fight. There's big commotion. Turns out the daughter has some kind of magic powers, and she causes like things to just fly around everywhere. And eventually the Witcher is able to put a stop to everything, save the day. It's also revealed apparently this knight and the daughter have already been together for a while and they love each other. So them getting to marry each other is a good win. And then also the Queen gets married. It's a simple little story, but I quite liked it. It was pretty good. It's sort of fairy tale-esque. Like, there's a lot of fairy tale elements in the novel as a whole, but it was very fairy tale-esque, this story in particular. It was pretty good. Fifth one we have is The Edge of the World. And this one starts out pretty standard. The Witcher is hired to go get rid of this devil who's been like sort of harassing the people of this town. Now, they don't want him killed or hurt in any way. They just want him gone. Geralt and his friend Dandelion, who joins him in this book, they go and investigate the situation. They meet with the devil. Eventually, much later in the story, the Witcher ends up getting into like a fight with the devil. And then as he's like chasing him through the field, some people on horseback run over and knock Geralt out. When Geralt comes to, he discovers that he's been captured by elves. Anyway, the elves are not very nice to him because they hate humankind, because humankind invaded their lands and took their homes and slaughtered their people and all that. Humans are pretty good at doing that, so I can understand the hatred. Anyway, they vent their frustrations and go on about how humanity sucks and all that, and then they're going to kill the Witcher. And it's revealed that that devil that was harassing the town is actually working for them. He was like stealing stuff for the elves. And the devil's there and he's like saying, oh, you can't kill them, you can't kill them. And then the elf queen comes over and is like, yeah, don't hurt them. So then the elves leave. Yeah, I don't know, this is sort of a weirder one. Like the whole thing with the elves and going after humans makes sense. So I just feel like it was sort of shoehorned into the story. The dynamics of, you know, elves and humans interacting after what humans have done to the elves. Like, there's interesting stories you could do with that. I just feel like it was very sort of underutilized in the story, if that makes sense. It just sort of came out of the blue right at the end. Like, oh, the elves were behind this. And then finally we have The Last Wish, the story that the book is named after. It starts out with Geralt and Dandelion fishing, and then they discover a genie in a bottle, which Dandelion accidentally releases. And then he gets like attacked, and his throat is severely injured, which is especially bad for Dandelion because he's a like singer and poet or something. But anyway, he's in a pretty bad shape, so Geralt has to take him into town to try and find a healer. He ends up learning about a sorceress who can help him. So he goes to visit this sorceress, who is called Yennefer. Anyway, Yennefer agrees to help Dandelion, heal him and fix his throat so he can actually sing and all that. But then she ends up betraying Geralt and using magic to force him to do as she wishes, which involves the Witcher attacking people that have spoken ill of this sorceress. Anyway, the Witcher's thrown in the dungeons, but eventually he gets to talk to the mayor and this priest dude after he's free from outside influence. And then it's revealed that Yennefer is actually trying to summon that genie from earlier, and she wants to bend it to her will. So she summons it in, and it starts like wreaking havoc on the town. So then the Witcher goes to the tavern where she is. They have a sort of a fight type thing because he doesn't think she has the strength to defeat the genie or whatever. So he wants to get her to safety. Anyway, eventually everything gets sorted out, and then Geralt and Yennefer bang on the floor of this tavern, surrounded by rubble. Now, I kind of skimmed over the whole thing with the genie quite a bit, but honestly, the genie stuff was sort of interesting, but this story was just so stupid. Geralt seems to have feelings for Yennefer, despite the fact that they've known each other for like all of 10 seconds, and then she uses magic to enslave him temporarily. Yeah, that's a bit odd. And then I guess Yennefer also shares these feelings because they end up banging on the tavern floor. It was very, very bizarre. I don't get it. I really don't. This whole story just belongs in r/are the straights okay, because No, they're not. So yeah, that's all the stories. I definitely have some mixed feelings in this book as a whole. I do quite like the setting, I like the themes, and I do like Geralt. However, the relationships that he has with women are just so mind-numbingly stupid. There's no development. Like it seems very forced and not well thought out at all. I'm intrigued by the main character and the setting and the themes of this world, so I am interested to see where the thing continues. Most of the stories were alright. Like, I think The Last Wish was bad, mainly because of Geralt and Yennefer's whole dynamic, which was just terrible. But aside from that, I don't think any of the other ones are bad. Like, some of them have their issues, but I don't think they're necessarily bad. I think it was overall good, but a lot of room for improvement. I think The Edge of the World is one of the weaker ones as well. The Witch is pretty good. A Grain of Truth is alright. The Lesser Evil is okay. And A Question of Price is really good. It's my favourite. That's it for my review. I will definitely be continuing this series at some point. And yes, I know I've started a lot of book series that I still haven't finished yet. I will get to the other ones I've started at some point, and I will begin to start finishing these series instead of starting new ones. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Goodbye.